Andre de Ruyter, the CEO of packaging giant Nampak, has been appointed the new Chief Executive of Eskom. He will assume his duties on January the 15th. He has more than 20 years of experience at Sasol in a number of senior management roles and replaces former Chief Executive Phakamani Hadebe, who stepped down in July citing health concerns. The Public Enterprises Ministry said in a statement that the appointment followed an exhaustive recruitment procedure. On the line to discuss this surprise appointment is energy analyst Ted Blom. Ted, good morning, or rather good evening, and welcome to The Full View. Is it really a surprise?
Absolutely, it's got me gobsmacked, and more so because I hear that the requirements for the position were assembled by the current board of Eskom, whom even the presidency has declared is not competent. So I don't know how you get an incompetent board to set up criteria for a CEO, and that criteria doesn't include the requirement for an engineer. I would have thought that anything less than an engineer running Eskom would be looking for more disasters.
Ooh. So on that basis, you arguing that he is not the right person for the job?
Look, I mean, I think it's all fairness, one must give him a chance.
Yeah.
Everybody deserves a chance if you've gotten through a process. But the bottom line is it's a very, very challenged position in that he hit the ground. He won't hit the ground running because he's not an engineer, and Eskom is very different to the organizations he served them. And secondly, he's got to implement a strategy which is not his own, which has been foisted upon him by the Eskom roadmap that was put together by government about 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
So not only is he going to hit familiar territory, but he's going to have to implement a strategy that he himself has had no hand in designing.
So this then means that the job that he has ahead of him, he will struggle to implement the turnaround strategy as well, considering that the deadline that has been set by government is by 2021. There should be a separation of these three entities. This is now the operation, generation, as well as distribution.
You know, the rule of thumb is if somebody comes from the industry or from the organization, he's got a chance of hitting the road running if he's a top candidate. But anybody outside of the company, especially the complex company that Eskom is, it's the most engineeringly challenged complex company on the continent. The chances of him actually getting to grips, as with the current board took longer than a year, and they're still not up to grips with what's going on in the Eskom. In fact, you hear the minister saying week after week that he's still learning about Eskom, and he's had the portfolio for more than 18 months. So if you get somebody who's not familiar and not technically qualified as an engineer to understand all the acronyms and the issues inside Eskom, I think you're expecting the near impossible.
Sure. So 142 candidates applied, and 8 being from Eskom. Do you think that the interviewees should have at least tried these candidates instead of this particular person?
Personally, I would have thought it should have been a headhunting exercise rather than a candidate screening exercise, because for anybody who knows Eskom well, let's say for 20 or 30 years, and knows some of the previous high performers within the organization, would immediately have a list of at least a half a dozen very well qualified candidates, and hopefully candidates that weren't involved in the last 10 years of corruption at Eskom. Because that's the problem, is the new CEO lands there, and the first briefing session is going to be briefed by people who have been part of the corrupted Eskom for the last 19 years.
Would Jacob Moroka have been that person who could have potentially been the person who comes in and then hits the ground running, considering that he was Eskom CEO before, and then on the other end as well, you have him there as being part of the 3 names that were suggested to the ministries?
Well, those 3 names seem to have been a red herring because none of those 3 were the final candidate. As far as Mr. Moroka is concerned, you know that he had a litigation issue with Eskom, and I'm scared that I'll pick up a similar litigation issue, so I'd rather not comment about Mr. Moroka.
Do you think that Andre de Ruyter would be able to deal with the unions?
That would be a big question. If he can win them over to a joint plan of action, and that's been the problem with the unions, is that the unions complaint has been that they've been left out in the cold, and they actually are a very key stakeholder in the road going forward for Eskom and the issues that Eskom is going to be facing now and in the next 10 years with its dilapidated generating capacity and the fact that it's run out of coal. So I would have thought that if he's got a good, strong relationship with NUMSA and NUM and Solidarity, which are the three key unions for Eskom, he's got a chance of maybe winning their support.
But the biggest tussle will, of course, be over whether there would be retrenchments at Eskom or not. And what we've seen in the way NUMSA has dealt with them, SAA, for instance, is this is going to be an uphill battle.
Absolutely. Any person who's taking over the Eskom job will be facing an uphill battle, more so if he's appointed as man alone. I don't believe any single human being on this earth can fix up Eskom alone. I've said that to the minister, I've said that to the chairman of Eskom, and I've said that to the CIO, and but seemingly publicly they don't agree with me. But I would have thought it's a team effort. You need a team of 6 to 10 very competent turnaround people, or people who know their nuts and bolts in terms of engineering, mining, metallurgy, coal procurement, etc., and electrical engineering.
Isn't the chief restructuring officer that person?
Sorry, I didn't miss that.
Isn't the chief restructuring officer that person that will be able to assist the Ruyter?
No, absolutely not. The chief restructuring officer is a debt specialist, and he's trying to sort out Eskom's debt profile.
Okay, thank you so much, Ted Blom, there, energy analyst. We go to a quick ad break, and when we come back, the full view continues.